Welcome to 10 Minutes with Barb and Ron. I'm Ron.
And I'm Barb, and we have another guest today. It's so exciting when we have guests. So I am going to let you, Lisa Hite, tell us a little bit about you and you know where you work and what you do and just whatever you want to share with us.
All right. Well, I am Lisa Hite, and I work for the state support team. This is my fourth year working for state support, and I primarily work in the area of career tech education. So I support schools with career tech education and special education, and I'm here with you tonight because a lot of that work also revolves around UDL, which is definitely one of my passions and has been for quite a while.
Yeah. Tell us about that passion and where you got started with UDL.
So I actually was started with UDL, I'm going to say 10 years ago, somewhere around there with one of our co-hosts tonight with Ron. And back then it was Jeff McCormick. They were bringing the whole concept of UDL to Northwest Ohio. And at that time I was the academic supervisor at a career center. And I took a team of my science department and some special education teachers to that, and it changed just everything in the way that my teachers interacted together and how they ran their classrooms. And I would say within the first 5 months, we were all pretty much hooked on UDL, and to this day, they continue UDL there in their classrooms, and I continue to spread it anywhere I can with career tech education.
You know, that's so exciting to hear that they're still doing it, because sometimes when you have a leader who gets something started and then they move on for whatever reason, sometimes those things fall off. So they must have really, bought into it.
I would say that the teachers who participated, who began to what we would call UDLize their lessons, right? We would spend time revising lessons. And when they saw the difference that would make in student engagement and with student success, that's the motivator that they keep going. In fact, just recently, I had a teacher contact me because we had offered up some UDL sessions at state support team. And because of the pandemic that we're living in, it didn't get enough people. And so we were going to have to cancel it. And that school in particular had 4 people registered, and so they begged and begged for me to somehow, and so I was able to go to them, and one of the participants who has had several years of training with me emailed me and said, "Oh, thank you for coming. Please don't ever put a year limit on UDL trainings." I think that just says really how important UDL is to teachers once they see that it works.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Gives me the chills, Ron.
I know it does. And just listening to Lisa always gives me the chills because she speaks the absolute truth. Those teachers that she was working with at that career tech was incredible. I mean, to go in and watch them in the classroom with the students was just amazing. And I did get to see it firsthand. So.
And I feel pretty blessed to be still working with it. I've worked with some Toledo public teachers from the career tech area, and I have a CAD teacher, and I wish that I had pulled up his exact data for you because he shared that data with me. Once he had a year of UDL training, and then he came back for that second year, I asked him to start kind of looking at data and how students were doing, and what he noticed was his enrollment skyrocketed over those 2 years of kids wanting to take his program. And he attributes that to UDL because kids they're having fun in their classrooms. They know that they're really learning and that this teacher is working with them to help them learn in a way that best fits them. And then they talk to other students and the other students want to be part of that. So not only does it help students to become expert learners, but it also encourages students to want to be in the classrooms where that kind of classroom environment exists.
That's important for a career tech too, because if your numbers go down very low for very many years, they kind of oust you and replace you with a different program. So that's huge.
That is a good point. Lisa, a while ago you said, you started looking at lessons plans and, breaking down some barriers. And, one of the things I often hear is that people talk about how sometimes just getting into that career tech setting where everything makes sense to learners and they understand why they're doing it, like that alone can re-engage. And so I'm curious, how did you take the first steps with the implementation there? Was it with looking at their lessons and making some small tweaks, or was it somewhere else?
It was definitely with their lessons and making small tweaks. I encouraged them to bring a lesson that was upcoming so they could see that immediate, like, let's do it. Let's try something new so we can see right away if it works or not. And we started with vocabulary. So that seems to be the easiest in, right, is to think about who are the kids in your classroom and what have you currently been doing and who might you have been missing by doing it that way. And so what could you do differently? And my teachers just blew me out of the water. We ended up creating a list of like 26 different ways that you could teach vocabulary or have students engage with that vocabulary. And that is so important in career tech education because industry, like they have their own jargon. And so for the career tech teachers, especially, I had a graphic design teacher from Toledo Public. And she just really rocked it with thinking of, she's visual because she teaches graphic arts. But what about those kids in her class who need some movement? Or what about those kids who they need to hear the words more often? And so she just really, going through UDL, just really changed the way that she was doing things. And so she began to, like this, one of my favorites, she would take her textbook because they would have a textbook for their graphic design course. And she decided, well, there are some kids who like to read that, but there might be some kids, since they're visual, that would want to just watch me teach it. And so she would record the lesson of everything that was covered in the content of that chapter. And the students could choose which they wanted to do. If they wanted to just read the text on their own, or if they wanted to watch her walk them through what was being covered in that chapter. And she said it was about 50% of the class. And that she never would have thought to do that, if we hadn't gone through UDL training.
Wow. That's super cool. It's so neat.
It is. And we have 2.5 minutes left. Would you consider kind of keeping an eye out for someone that's successfully doing universal design for learning that might want to do a podcast with Louis Lord Nelson?
So I already have.
Oh.
Two teachers. Yep. The woman I was just sharing her story, Daphne Herford from Toledo Public, she's done a podcast with Louis Lord Nelson, as well as Lauren Helberg from Fort County Career Center. She's a math teacher who is a rock star at UDL. She has done a podcast, but I certainly have more names that I can share. Oh my gosh, Morgan Weber. She's currently participating in UDL with me again this year, and she would be great for Louis Lord Nelson's podcast. But I have to share with you, we are doing Equity by Design as part of that coursework, and she just kind of had an aha moment just in chapter 1 talking about it. And she realized instead of having students, when they do the dietary unit, instead of having students go by what they eat personally, that might have been too hard for some kids to have to share what their food situation is like. And so now she's changing that assignment to be, she's researching all kinds of different diets that are out there, like if you're diabetic or you have celiac disease, and that she's going to give them, a whole list to choose from, and they would create diets for that disease. It just made her realize that the assignment she had given before, that might have been a barrier for students who come from poverty. That, just seeing those aha moments with teachers, it's pretty cool.
That's why you've been an advocate for so long, right, Lisa?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Barb, we have 30 seconds left. So Ron's out, and you can take us the rest of the way with Lisa.
Well, I love hearing how it impacts in the classroom and how, like you said, let's just start small, try something. And those aha moments keep that motivation going, don't they?
They certainly do.
So Lisa, just one last piece of advice you have for anybody who's thinking about UDL, what would that be?
That would be get it started and make sure you give your teachers time to do the work. That definitely is one of the things. We're so pressed for time, and to give them a full day to revise their lessons together, to talk to each other and support each other. It's worth it. It's worth the investment in time because you'll get a return on that investment.
That's great. Barb is out.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks, guys.
YouTube, please subscribe, like, comment, and share.